I packed up her clothes and sent them to storage, emptied our bank accounts, burned every photo, and put the house up for sale. By the time she returned from her business trip, chaos was waiting, but things took a dark turn when she and her lover were kidnapped at the airport, marking the start of my brutal revenge. They say betrayal breaks a man, but for me it ignited something darker, a relentless thirst for justice. Lucas Brunner was a man who believed in hard work and loyalty. At 43, he was the director of operations for a luxury hospitality group in Vienna, managing a portfolio of prestigious hotels across Europe. His wife Marlene was his pride, a striking, vivacious woman who had a knack for making everyone in a room feel seen. Together, they were the couple others admired. But over the past year, Marlene had become distant. Her laughter, once infectious, felt hollow. Her late-night work trips grew more frequent, her excuses less convincing. Lucas wanted to believe her stories about important clients and networking events, but unease had settled in his chest. One evening, Marlene returned home from a client dinner, her cheeks flushed, her dress slightly wrinkled. Lucas tried to ignore the faint smell of cologne that wasn't his. "How was your night?" he asked, his tone measured. She smiled quickly. "Exhausting. But good, we might land a major deal." Lucas nodded, forcing himself to swallow his doubts, but deep down he knew. The truth came to light during one of Marlene's many business trips. Lucas had become suspicious and hired a private investigator, a decision that felt equal parts paranoid and desperate. Within days, the investigator delivered damning evidence. Marlene wasn't meeting clients. She was meeting a man named Eric Fuchs, a wealthy Swiss entrepreneur known for his lavish lifestyle and arrogance. Photos showed them together at luxury resorts, sharing intimate moments. Lucas's chest tightened as he scrolled through the evidence, each image a hammer blow to his trust. The final betrayal came in the form of a recorded phone call. In it, Marlene's voice dripped with disdain as she spoke to Eric. "Lucas is so predictable," she said. "I could tell him I was flying to the moon and he'd believe me." Eric laughed. "Good. The less he knows, the better for us." That night, Lucas sat in his darkened study, his hands trembling as he processed the betrayal. The love he'd built his life around was gone, replaced by a deep, seething anger. "You've made a fool of me, Marlene, but you'll regret it. Both of you will." Lucas began his revenge the moment Marlene boarded a flight to Geneva to meet Eric. She had told him it was another business trip, her usual excuse. But Lucas knew better, packing her life away. Lucas spent the day methodically packing Marlene's belongings. Her designer dresses, shoes, and jewelry were carefully boxed and sent to a storage facility under his name. He left only a single suitcase containing the basics, a pointed message about what her life would look like without him. The bank accounts. Lucas closed their joint accounts, transferring the bulk of their savings into a separate account she couldn't access. He left her with enough money for a week, ensuring she wouldn't be stranded, but wouldn't live comfortably either. Erasing the past, every photo, every memento of their life together was burned in the fireplace. Lucas watched the flames consume them, the ashes scattering like the remnants of his trust. Selling the house. The final step was listing their house for sale. Lucas contacted a real estate agent, ensuring the property would be shown while Marlene was away. By the time she returned, the house she thought was her sanctuary would no longer be hers. Lucas wasn't content with dismantling Marlene's life. He wanted Eric to feel the consequences too. Using contacts in the hospitality industry, he began planting rumors about Eric's unethical business practices. He also arranged for Eric's travel itinerary to accidentally leak to a local journalist, knowing it would cause trouble for someone as image-conscious as Eric. But Lucas had something darker in mind for their return. He hired a private security firm with questionable methods, ensuring their arrival at Vienna's airport would be anything but smooth. When Marlene and Eric arrived at the airport, they were met not by a warm welcome, but by chaos. Two men in dark suits intercepted them near baggage claim, their faces cold and expressionless. "Come with us," one of the men said, his voice low and commanding. "What is this?" Eric demanded, his arrogance faltering. The men didn't answer. Instead, they escorted Marlene and Eric to an unmarked van parked outside. Eric tried to resist, but one of the men subtly revealed a firearm holstered under his jacket. Marlene's face paled as she realized they had no choice. The van drove to a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of Vienna. Inside, Marlene and Eric were separated and placed in stark, dimly lit rooms. Lucas watched from a hidden observation room, his heart pounding. This was his moment of reckoning. The interrogations began. The men posing as investigators hired by an anonymous party bombarded Eric with accusations of fraud and infidelity. Marlene was shown photos of Eric with other women, fabricated but convincing, and was told he had been using her as a pawn. "Do you see now?" Lucas thought as he watched her crumble. "Do you see how it feels to be betrayed?" After hours of interrogation, the men handed Marlene a sealed envelope. Inside was a single photo of Lucas standing in front of a packed moving truck. Scrawled across the back were the words "Welcome home." As Marlene stared at the photo, her hands trembling, one of the men leaned in close. "Your husband sends his regards." The room fell silent as the weight of Lucas's revenge began to sink in. The drive from the warehouse to their former home was silent. Marlene sat in the back of a taxi, clutching the photo Lucas had left for her. The house that once symbolized their love was now a hollow shell of memories. As the taxi turned onto their street, her worst fears were confirmed. A large "for sale" sign was staked in the front yard and moving trucks lined the driveway. She stepped inside to find the house nearly empty. The walls were bare, the furniture gone. The only sound was the echo of her heels against the hardwood floor. "Lucas," she called, her voice trembling. In the dining room, she found a single envelope taped to the table. Inside was a brief note written in Lucas's familiar hand. "Everything you valued is gone, just like my trust in you." Marlene sank into a chair, tears streaming down her face. She knew she had underestimated him, but the full extent of his anger was only beginning to unfold. Meanwhile, Eric was scrambling to contain the damage Lucas had set in motion. The leaked documents, planted rumors, and fabricated evidence of shady dealings had reached critical lows. Investors pulled out of his ventures, lawsuits piled up, and his carefully curated reputation as a savvy entrepreneur unraveled. Eric tried reaching out to Marlene for support, but she didn't answer his calls. She was too consumed by her own chaos to care about his downfall. Days later, Eric received an anonymous package at his office. Inside was a USB drive containing surveillance footage from the airport warehouse. The video showed him being escorted into the van, his arrogance replaced by fear. It ended with the words, "This is just the beginning." Eric's hand shook as he watched, realizing he wasn't just dealing with bad luck. Someone was targeting him. A week after returning to Vienna, Marlene finally tracked Lucas down to his temporary apartment. He opened the door to find her disheveled, her once pristine appearance replaced by desperation. "Lucas," she began, tears welling in her eyes. "I was wrong, I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Please let me come back." Lucas studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Fix this," he repeated. "Marlene, you didn't just betray me, you humiliated me. You mocked me to your lover, called me predictable. Do you think I can forget that?" "I wasn't thinking clearly," she pleaded. "I was selfish, I know, but I still love you." Lucas stepped back, his tone icy. "Love? If this is your idea of love, I want no part of it. You destroyed us, Marlene. You don't get to come back and pretend everything is fine." He handed her another envelope. "Inside are the divorce papers. Sign them and you'll get enough to start over. But don't expect anything more." Marlene's hands shook as she opened the envelope. "You can't just throw me away like this." Lucas's gaze hardened. "You threw me away first. I'm just giving you what you wanted, a life without me." He closed the door, leaving her alone in the hallway, clutching the papers that marked the end of their marriage. With Marlene out of his life and Eric's empire in ruins, Lucas felt a sense of relief for the first time in months. He had taken back control, ensuring that those who betrayed him faced the consequences of their actions. One evening, Lucas attended a gala hosted by a rival hospitality group. While mingling with colleagues, he struck up a conversation with a woman named Clara, an event planner who had recently moved to Vienna. Her warmth and intelligence were a stark contrast to the coldness he had endured with Marlene. As the night went on, Lucas found himself laughing, a sound he hadn't heard from himself in far too long. Months later, Lucas received an email from Eric. The message was brief but desperate. "You think you've won, but I know things about Marlene you don't. Meet me and I'll tell you everything." Lucas hesitated but agreed to meet at a public cafe. When Eric arrived, he looked like a shadow of the man he once was. His suit rumpled, his confidence gone. "What do you want, Eric?" Lucas asked, his tone measured. Eric leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Marlene lied to you more than you know. She wasn't just cheating, she was helping me access your company's client list. She thought she was being clever, but I was using her the whole time." Lucas's jaw tightened, but he remained calm. "Why tell me this now?" "Because I want to take her down too," Eric said bitterly. "She turned on me the moment things went south. I have proof she embezzled money from your accounts to fund our trips." Lucas leaned back, his mind racing. While Eric's confession didn't change his plans, it validated his decision to cut Marlene out of his life completely. Armed with Eric's new information, Lucas ensured Marlene's legal troubles continued to grow. By the time he was done, she was left with nothing but regrets and the realization that she had betrayed the one person who truly cared for her. Lucas, meanwhile, embraced his fresh start, his career flourished, and his connection with Clara deepened. He had learned to trust again, but this time with someone who valued him. One evening, as Lucas stood on the balcony of his new apartment overlooking the city, he reflected on everything he had endured. The betrayal, the pain, and the revenge had reshaped him, but they hadn't destroyed him. Betrayal doesn't define you. It reveals who you truly are and who you're better off without. He raised a glass to the skyline, a faint smile on his lips, to freedom, to resilience, and to new beginnings. Thank you for being a part of this story with me. If it moved you, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Lauren's story. I've noticed many of you who enjoy these stories aren't subscribed yet. By subscribing, you're not just following a channel. You're becoming part of a community that values deep, meaningful storytelling. Let's continue exploring these heartfelt journeys together. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss our next story.